Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life, but you can't remember when you gave them permission to take yours? You were never faking it to impress others. You were surviving. But now, you don't even know what's real anymore. You don't remember exactly when it started, but I'll bet it was early. Maybe it was the day you brought home that A+ report card, and suddenly everyone's face lit up like you just solved world hunger. Look how brilliant you are, they said. And for the first time, you felt that warm, addictive glow of being valuable. Maybe it was when you realized that the adults around you were only truly happy when you were good. When you said the right thing. When you didn't cry too loudly or need too much or ask for things that were inconvenient. From that moment forward, you entered what I call the long-term audition, the role of the excellent child. The one who gets it right. You learned to read the room before you entered it. You learned to smile when you were exhausted, to say I'm fine when you desperately needed a hug. You became fluent in the language of other people's expectations, and somehow, you forgot how to speak your own. And here's what no one tells you about being the brilliant child. You don't just learn how to be impressive. You forget how to be anything else. No one ever taught you how to be real, only how to be admirable. Carl Jung had a term for what happened to you. He called it the persona, the social mask you were not just to fit in, but to survive, to be recognized, to be loved. But here's what Jung understood that most people miss entirely. That mask, worn day after day, year after year, doesn't just sit on your face. It fuses with your skin. It becomes so integrated into your identity that you forget you're wearing it at all. Think about your morning routine. You wake up, and before your feet even hit the floor, you're already putting on a mask. You check your phone and immediately slip into the version of yourself that responds to emails with just the right tone. Professional but friendly, competent but not threatening. You go through your day switching between personas like a method actor in multiple plays running simultaneously. There's the you that's charming in meetings. The you that's endlessly patient with your family. The you that has all the right opinions about current events. The you that never, ever admits when you're struggling. But then night comes. The meetings end. The conversations fade. The performances wrap up. And in the quiet darkness of your bedroom, there's this hollow ache in your chest that you can't quite name. You don't know what you actually want anymore. You don't know which emotions are genuinely yours and which ones are just automatic responses. You don't know where you end and where your performance begins. This is where the Carl Jung shadow begins to stir, not as a monster, but as the forgotten truth of who you really are. Let me tell you about Grace. She's 32, works in marketing, and from the outside, her life looks like a carefully curated Instagram post. Perfect apartment with plants that somehow never die. Perfect job with a corner office view. Perfect responses to every situation that crosses her path. Grace can walk into any room and instantly become whatever that room needs. Board meeting? She's sharp and strategic. Friend's birthday party? She's warm and engaging. Family dinner? She's the successful daughter who never causes problems. But Grace told me something that stopped me cold. I realized I haven't made a single decision in 5 years that wasn't based on what I thought I should want, rather than what I actually wanted. I don't even remember what wanting something feels like anymore. It's like I've been living on autopilot, but the person who programmed the autopilot left the building years ago. Grace isn't broken. Grace is brilliant. So brilliant that she learned to optimize herself right out of her own life. And here's the psychological trap that brilliant people fall into. You become so good at reading what others need that you lose touch with what you need. You become so skilled at managing other people's emotions that you stop feeling your own. You become so accomplished at being who you're supposed to be that you forget who you actually are. Jung wrote about this split he saw in his patients. The way the conscious personality and the authentic self could become so estranged that they barely recognize each other. He called the hidden, authentic parts of yourself the shadow. Not just your dark side, as most people think, but everything you pushed away to become acceptable. Your shadow holds your repressed anger, all the times you smiled when you want to scream. It holds your denied sadness, all the tears you swallowed to keep others comfortable. It holds your authentic desires, the ones that felt too selfish or inconvenient to acknowledge. Most importantly, your shadow holds your real joy, the kind of happiness that doesn't depend on achievement or approval, but simply exists because you exist. The persona was supposed to protect you. It was meant to be a tool you could pick up and put down as needed. But somewhere along the way, it became a prison. A beautiful, impressive, socially acceptable prison. And the most terrifying part? You become so identified with your persona that the thought of removing it feels like death. Because if you're not the brilliant child, if you're not the one with all the answers, if you're not the person everyone can count on, then who are you? That question doesn't just scare you. It terrifies the part of you that has built an entire identity around being indispensable. But here's what Jung knew that changes everything. That terror isn't coming from your authentic self. It's coming from your persona, desperately trying to maintain control. Your real self isn't afraid of being discovered. Your real self has been waiting patiently for you to remember it exists. Here's the revelation that changes everything. The question that terrifies brilliant people more than failure ever could. Who are you when you're not being impressive? Without the achievements that define you, without the perfect responses that make everyone comfortable, without the carefully crafted image that everyone admires. What's left? This is the question that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., isn't it? Because failure is something that happens to you. But this is about discovering that the you everyone loves might not be you at all. I want you to try something with me. It might feel uncomfortable, but stay with me. Close your eyes for a moment and picture yourself at age 7. Not the version of 7 that your family remembers. The good kid who cleaned their room and got stars on their homework. I mean the real 7-year-old you. The one who existed before you learned that love came with conditions. That child had opinions about everything. They cried when they needed to cry. They said no without writing a dissertation about why. They laughed too loudly and asked too many questions and wanted what they wanted without justifying it to a single soul. That child didn't worry about being impressive. They were just present, alive, real. Now open your eyes and feel the distance between that child and who you are today. Feel how far you've traveled from that original self. Jung believed that somewhere inside you, that child still exists. Not as a memory, but as a living part of your psyche that's been waiting, sometimes for decades, for you to remember them. But here's what happened, and this is crucial. You didn't lose your real self because you were weak. You lost it because you were so incredibly strong that you could carry everyone else's expectations without breaking. You were the brilliant child, the one who could read the emotional temperature of any room and adjust accordingly. The one who could sense what people needed and become it. The one who could navigate complex family dynamics, excel in school, and make adults feel proud, sometimes all before breakfast. But brilliance without boundaries becomes a curse. Let me tell you about David. He's 28, a software engineer who can solve any technical problem you put in front of him. His code is elegant, his solutions are innovative, and his colleagues think he's some kind of genius. But David called me at 2 a.m. last month, and I could hear him crying as he spoke. I have everything I thought I wanted. The job, the apartment, the respect of my peers. But I feel like I'm suffocating in someone else's life. I don't even know what music I actually like anymore. I've been listening to whatever I thought made me seem interesting to other people. David's breakthrough came when he realized that his depression wasn't a mental health crisis. It was his authentic self, staging a rebellion against a life that had no room for his truth. I spent so many years becoming the perfect version of what I thought a successful man should be, he told me. But I never asked myself what I actually wanted success to feel like. I just followed the blueprint everyone else was using. This is what happens to brilliant people. You become so good at reverse engineering what others want that you lose touch with your own wants entirely. You become so skilled at meeting expectations that you forget you're allowed to have your own. Your exhaustion isn't laziness. Your anxiety isn't weakness. Your feeling of being disconnected from your own life isn't a character flaw. It's your psyche's way of saying, we need to talk. Jung called this the transcendent function, the psyche's natural drive toward wholeness. Your symptoms aren't evidence that something's wrong with you. They're evidence that something real in you is trying to emerge. The depression you've been trying to manage? It might be your authentic self, grieving the life you never got to live. The anxiety that keeps you up at night? It might be your intuition, trying to tell you that something fundamental in your life is misaligned. The exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to cure? It might be the fatigue of maintaining a persona that requires constant vigilance. Your body and your psyche are not malfunctioning. They're trying to save you. But here's the part that nobody tells you about this awakening. It doesn't feel like relief at first. It feels like grief, because you have to mourn the version of yourself that you thought you needed to be. You have to grieve the life you built around other people's definitions of success. You have to let go of the identity that kept you safe, even if it also kept you small. You have to face the possibility that some of the people in your life fell in love with your performance, not your person. And that's not a judgment on them. It's just reality. When you've been performing for so long, even your closest relationships might be built on a foundation of who you thought you needed to be. This isn't about becoming someone new. This is about remembering someone you never actually lost. You didn't lose your real self. You just stopped visiting it. And here's the most beautiful part. It's been waiting for you this entire time. Patient, forgiving, still holding all the dreams and desires and authentic feelings you set aside to become acceptable. The question isn't, how do I fix myself? The question is, how do I come home to myself? And the answer begins with the smallest, most radical act imaginable. Telling the truth about what you actually feel, want, and need. Not what you should feel, want, and need. What you actually do. The shift doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It doesn't arrive with a lightning bolt of clarity or a moment of dramatic revelation. It begins with the smallest rebellion, a tiny act of authenticity in a life that's been scripted for so long you forgot there were other ways to be. Maybe it starts when you notice the tiny ways you betray yourself every single day. The automatic, "I'm sorry," when someone bumps into you. The way you laugh at jokes that aren't funny. The moment you realize you're more afraid of disappointing others than you are of disappointing yourself. But then something changes. You start to wonder, why do I apologize every time I say no? Why does setting a boundary feel like I'm committing a crime? Why, when I'm finally alone, do I feel confused instead of relieved? Let me tell you about the day everything shifted for Maya. She's 35. A therapist who spent her entire career helping everyone else heal while her own wounds stayed carefully hidden behind professional competence. Maya was the friend everyone called in crisis, the daughter who never caused problems, the professional who had all the answers. She could hold space for anyone's pain, but she'd never learned how to hold space for her own. Maya's turning point came during a session with a client who looked at her with genuine curiosity and asked, "Do you ever let people take care of you?" The question didn't just surprise Maya. It terrified her, because in that moment, she realized that the answer was no. Not just rarely, but never. She had spent 35 years being the caretaker, the strong one, the person who had it all together. That night, Maya did something she hadn't done in 15 years. She called her best friend and said 7 words that changed everything. "I need help. I don't know who I am." Not, "I need help with this project," or "I need advice about this situation." Just, "I need help. I don't know who I am when I'm not helping someone else." It was the first completely real thing she'd said in years. The beautiful irony? Her friend later told her it was the moment they felt closer to Maya than they ever had. Not because Maya was impressive, but because Maya was real. This is how the turning point happens for brilliant people. It's not about learning new skills or implementing new strategies. It's about unlearning the habit of monitoring yourself for acceptability. You start to catch yourself in the middle of performances you didn't even realize you were giving. You're in a meeting and you hear yourself agreeing with something you don't actually believe just because disagreeing would create tension. You're with friends and you notice you're curating your stories to make them more entertaining, more polished, more likable. You're on a date and you realize you're so focused on being the right kind of interesting that you haven't actually been interested in anything the other person has said. These moments of recognition aren't comfortable. They're jarring. They force you to confront how automatic your performance has become. But here's what Jung understood, and what makes Carl Jung Shadow Work so quietly revolutionary. These moments of discomfort aren't signs that something's going wrong. They're signs that something's going right. Your authentic self is waking up, and it's not particularly impressed with the show you've been running. The transformation starts small, microscopic even. You're asked how you're doing, and instead of the automatic "great, how are you?" you pause and actually check in with yourself first. You're invited to something you don't want to attend, and instead of creating an elaborate excuse, you simply say, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I can't make it." You're feeling sad, and instead of immediately trying to fix it or analyze it or explain it away, you just let yourself feel sad for a moment. These aren't dramatic gestures. They're acts of integration. Small moments when you choose truth over comfort, authenticity over approval, your real feelings over your trained responses. And something remarkable starts to happen. You begin to hear your own voice again. Not the one that sounds impressive in meetings or charming at parties, but the one that knows what it needs. The one that has opinions. The one that feels things without immediately trying to manage or optimize those feelings. You start to recognize the difference between what you want and what you think you should want. Between what you feel and what you think you should feel. Between who you are and who you think you need to be. This is what Jung meant by individuation. Not becoming someone new, but becoming undividedly yourself. Bringing together all the scattered pieces of your personality that you've been hiding in different rooms. Your anger isn't ugly. It's information about your boundaries. Your sadness isn't weakness. It's depth and emotional intelligence. Your anxiety isn't pathology. It's often your intuition trying to tell you that something in your life isn't aligned with your truth. Your need for solitude isn't antisocial. It's how you reconnect with yourself. Your desire for things that don't make sense to other people isn't selfish. It's your authentic self finally getting a voice. The goal isn't to eliminate these feelings. The goal is to stop being afraid of them. David, the software engineer I mentioned earlier, described his experience this way. It was like I'd been living in a house where all the windows were painted shut. I thought that was just how houses were supposed to be. Then one day, I realized I could scrape the paint off. The light that came in was almost blinding at first, but it was real light. My light. Your healing doesn't begin with trying to be better. It begins with stopping the exhausting work of trying to be perfect. It begins with the radical act of believing that you're allowed to take up space in your own life. Coming home to yourself doesn't happen all at once. It happens in moments. Tiny moments when you choose truth over comfort, authenticity over approval, your real voice over your trained responses. You begin to recognize the sound of your own thoughts again. Not the ones that sound impressive or socially acceptable, but the ones that are actually yours. The quiet voice that has opinions about things. The one that knows what it needs without having to justify it to anyone. Jung called this process shadow integration. Not destroying the parts of yourself you've been hiding, but bringing them into the light with compassion. Not as enemies to be defeated, but as exiled parts of yourself coming home. Your repressed anger? It's not rage waiting to destroy everything you've built. It's your boundary-setting mechanism that's been offline for years, atrophying from disuse. When you were 8 and someone took your toy, you knew immediately that it wasn't okay. You didn't need to write a dissertation about property rights or worry about seeming confrontational. You just knew, this isn't right, and I'm going to say something about it. That clarity is still in you. It's been waiting patiently while you've been explaining away every violation of your boundaries, every moment when someone treated you in a way that didn't feel good. You're denied sadness. It's not depression that needs to be medicated away. It's grief for all the times you weren't allowed to feel what you felt. All the times you had to smile when you wanted to cry. All the times you had to say, "I'm fine," when you were anything but fine. That sadness isn't pathology. It's your heart finally getting permission to break open about all the things that actually broke it. Your hidden vulnerability? It's not weakness that makes you a target. It's the doorway to real intimacy with others and with yourself. It's what allows you to connect with people on a level deeper than impressive conversations about impressive things. Let me tell you about what happened when Grace, the marketing professional I mentioned earlier, started integrating these hidden parts of herself. I had a panic attack in my office, she told me, right in the middle of a presentation about Q3 numbers. I just stopped talking. My hands started shaking, and I couldn't breathe. In the old version of Grace's life, this would have been a catastrophe. Evidence that she was failing, that she couldn't handle her responsibilities, that she was weak. But something different happened. Instead of pushing through or making excuses, Grace looked at her team and said, "I need to take a break. I'm having a hard time right now, and I need a few minutes." And you know what? She continued. 3 people came up to me afterward and thanked me. They said they'd been struggling too, but they didn't think they were allowed to say it. My vulnerability gave them permission to be human. This is what happens when you stop performing strength and start embodying authenticity. You don't become weak. You become real. And real strength is magnetic in a way that performed strength never can be. The brilliant child in you doesn't need to disappear. That intelligence, that sensitivity, that ability to understand complex situations, these are genuine gifts. But they're meant to serve your authentic self, not replace it. You learn to use your brilliance differently. Instead of reading the room to figure out who you should be, you read the room to decide whether you want to be there at all. Instead of adapting yourself to fit every situation, you start choosing situations that have room for who you actually are. Instead of being impressive, you start being interested in your own experience, your own needs, your own truth. Your relationships change too, and this part can be challenging. The people who were primarily attracted to your performance might start to fade away. And that's not a loss, that's a clarification. The people who love your real self, your unpolished self, your sometimes messy and uncertain self, these people move closer. You discover that the thing you were most afraid of, being seen without your mask, is actually the thing that creates real intimacy. I remember when David sent me a text message 6 months after our first conversation. I told my parents I was taking a sabbatical from my job to figure out what I actually want to do with my life. I was terrified they'd be disappointed. Instead, my dad said he'd been waiting 20 years for me to admit I was unhappy. Turns out, my performance wasn't even fooling the people I was performing for. This is what Jung meant when he wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But here's what he also knew. It's the only thing that actually works. You can't love your way out of the need for authenticity. You can't achieve your way out of the requirement to be real. You can't impress your way into genuine connection. But you can choose, moment by moment, to stop betraying yourself in small ways. You can choose to honor your real feelings, even when they're inconvenient. You can choose to say what you mean, want what you want, and need what you need, without apologizing for taking up space in your own life. You start to understand that your sensitivity isn't a burden. It's a superpower that helps you navigate the world with more accuracy and compassion. Your need for solitude isn't antisocial. It's how you maintain connection with yourself. Your high standards aren't perfectionism, they're self-respect. Your intensity isn't too much. It's the right amount for someone who feels things deeply. The brilliant child you were is still there. But now, instead of performing for approval, they're simply living, present, real, undivided. And that's not a consolation prize. That's the whole point. You were the brilliant child, the one who could read between every line, sense what everyone needed, become whatever the moment required. Your emotional intelligence was off the charts. You could walk into a room and instantly understand the dynamics, the tensions, the unspoken needs floating in the air like invisible threads. But here's what nobody told you. Your brilliance was never supposed to be a cage. Your sensitivity was meant to help you navigate the world, not disappear into it. Your intelligence was meant to serve your authentic self, not replace it. Your ability to understand others was meant to complement your understanding of yourself, not substitute for it. The excellence that once saved you, that remarkable ability to adapt, to perform, to be everything to everyone, it served its purpose. It got you through childhood. It helped you survive in environments that didn't have room for your real feelings. It protected you when being real felt too dangerous. But you're not just trying to survive anymore. You're here to live. And living requires something that performing never could. The courage to be real, even when real isn't impressive. Especially when real isn't impressive. Jung believed that the goal of life isn't happiness, it's wholeness. Not perfection, but integration. Not being the best version of yourself, but being the truest version of yourself. This is the core of Carl Jung Shadow Work. Not erasing parts of yourself, but reuniting with what you once had to exile in order to belong. Your authentic self isn't hiding because it's broken or damaged or somehow deficient. It's hiding because it's been waiting for permission to exist without having to justify its worth. Today, right now, listening to these words, you can give yourself that permission. You can stop auditing your feelings for acceptability. You can stop translating your needs in a language that won't inconvenience anyone. You can stop living as if your real self is an emergency that needs to be managed. Your real self isn't a problem to be solved. It's a life to be lived. If something in this video has stirred something in you, if you felt that quiet recognition that yes, this is exactly what I've been trying to say feeling, don't let it go. Take a moment right now. Not later, not when you have time, not when you've figured everything out. Right now, write yourself a note, not a plan or a goal or a strategy for self-improvement. Just a simple acknowledgement from one part of yourself to another. I remember you. I see you. You're allowed to be here. Write about the last time you felt completely yourself. Write about what you need but have been afraid to ask for. Write about the dream you abandoned because it didn't seem practical enough. Write to the 7-year-old version of yourself who had opinions about everything and wasn't afraid to feel their feelings. Tell them, I'm sorry I made you wait so long. I'm ready to remember who we are, because this isn't really a video about psychology or Carl Jung or shadow work. This is a mirror, a reminder, a gentle invitation to come home to the person you were before you learned that love came with conditions. You were the brilliant child who could sense what everyone needed. Now you get to be the real adult who knows what you need. You were the sensitive kid who felt everything. Now you get to be the integrated person who honors those feelings instead of managing them. You were the one with all the answers. Now you get to be the one with authentic questions. And that's not just healing. That's homecoming. The light you've been searching for in achievements, in other people's approval, in the perfect version of yourself that you keep trying to become, that light isn't somewhere out there. It's the light you dimmed to make others comfortable. It's the light you've been carrying this whole time, hidden behind the mask of who you thought you needed to be. It's time to turn it back on. Not to impress anyone, not to prove anything, just to see clearly again, just to feel alive again, just to be real again. The brilliant child you were never left. They've been waiting patiently for you to remember that being real is the most impressive thing you can do. Welcome home.